Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever wondered why some people rise after setbacks while others stay down? Why some seem to face life's storms with unshakable courage while others crumble under the weight of challenges? The difference isn't luck, intelligence, or even opportunity. The difference is mental strength. Mental strength is not about pretending life is easy. It's about equipping yourself with the tools to stand firm, to endure, and to move forward even when the ground beneath you feels uncertain. And today I want to share with you 8 ways to build unbreakable mental strength. Practical, human, and achievable. One of the most exhausting things we can do in life is to wrestle endlessly with circumstances we have no power to change. It is like standing in the middle of a storm and screaming at the clouds, demanding the rain to stop, or pleading with the wind to be still. No matter how hard we try, no matter how loud we shout, the storm will rage on. Yet so many of us spend our lives fighting storms that were never ours to control. The economy dips, and we panic as if our worry could reverse the trend. Someone criticizes us, and we replay their words 1,000 times in our head as if obsessing could somehow rewrite their opinion. We get stuck in traffic and our blood pressure rises, as if our frustration could part the sea of cars like Moses and make the road clear. But it never does. The storm keeps blowing, the cars keep idling, the critics keep talking, and we keep exhausting ourselves. This is the trap. This is what drains us of our mental strength, not the external events themselves, but our relentless need to wrestle with things we cannot bend to our will. The truth is, we cannot control the weather, the global markets, or the unfiltered opinions of others. But we can always control how we respond. We can control our choices, our reactions, and our effort. That is where true power lies. It is the only kind of control that actually matters. Viktor Frankl understood this in the most brutal of circumstances. As a prisoner in Nazi concentration camps, he was stripped of everything: his freedom, his possessions, his family. His captors controlled his environment, his food, even the rhythm of his days. They controlled his body. But he discovered that there was one thing they could never control: his mind. They could not dictate the meaning he gave to his suffering. They could not dictate his attitude toward his circumstances. And in that discovery, he found liberation. He realized that the last of all freedoms is the freedom to choose one's own response. Even in the depths of despair, he could choose dignity, he could choose purpose, he could choose hope. That is not just a lesson from history, it is a call to each of us. Because while most of us will never experience suffering on that scale, we all face situations that feel overwhelming, situations that make us feel powerless. We all have moments when we are tempted to believe the narrative that we are victims of life rather than participants in it. But we are never powerless. We may not always have the power to change the circumstance, but we always have the power to change ourselves within the circumstance. Think about it this way: imagine holding a glass of water. It doesn't weigh much at first, but hold it out at arm's length for a few minutes and it starts to feel heavy. Hold it for an hour and it becomes unbearable. The weight of the glass hasn't changed, but your ability to carry it has. That's what happens when we hold on to things we cannot control. We grip tightly to them, replaying them in our minds, analyzing them, wishing they were different. The weight doesn't go away, it grows. And soon we're not just tired, we're broken. The only way to find relief is to put the glass down, to release what we cannot hold forever. Releasing control is not the same as giving up. It is not about apathy. It is about wisdom. It is about recognizing the difference between what is within your circle of influence and what lies far beyond it. And it is about choosing to invest your finite energy in what actually makes a difference. When you focus on what you can control, your discipline, your consistency, your effort, you stop wasting energy on the impossible and you start gaining strength from progress. Athletes understand this principle well. A sprinter cannot control the weather on race day. They cannot control the talent of the runner in the next lane. They cannot control whether the starter pistol misfires. But they can control their preparation. They can control their focus at the starting line. They can control the technique of their stride. And when they pour all their energy into what they can control, they give themselves the best possible chance of success, no matter the conditions. The same is true in relationships. You cannot control whether someone loves you back, whether they stay or whether they leave. You cannot control whether someone respects you or whether they choose betrayal, but you can control how you show up. You control whether you love with honesty, whether you act with integrity, whether you keep your word. And when you do, you can walk away from any relationship knowing you gave your best without being haunted by the shadows of what if. And in careers, the principle holds as well. You cannot control the economy. You cannot control corporate decisions made in boardrooms behind closed doors. You cannot control every variable of your industry, but you can control your skills. You can control your work ethic. You can control your creativity, your persistence, your ability to adapt. And often, it is those who relentlessly focus on what they can control who rise, not because the world gets easier, but because they get stronger. There is also freedom in letting go. When you stop gripping tightly to what you cannot change, you release yourself from unnecessary suffering. You create mental space to breathe, to think, to dream. You open yourself to new possibilities. And paradoxically, it is in letting go of control over the uncontrollable that we regain control of ourselves. Consider how much energy we waste worrying about other people's opinions. We shrink ourselves, adjust our behavior, and second-guess our choices all because of voices we cannot silence. But the reality is this: no matter what you do, someone will criticize. If you succeed, they'll envy. If you fail, they'll judge. If you stay silent, they'll question your courage. If you speak up, they'll question your motives. You cannot control their voices, but you can control your own. You can choose to let your voice rise above the noise, anchored not in their approval, but in your values. This shift in perspective is what transforms ordinary people into resilient leaders. It is what separates those who crumble under the weight of pressure from those who rise through it. Because resilience is not about never falling. It is about choosing how to stand again. It is about saying, this setback is not the end of me. This storm will not define me. I may not control what comes, but I will control how I meet it. Life will always give us storms. Some we can influence, others we cannot. The question is not whether storms will come. They will. The question is, when they do, where will we place our focus? Will we waste our strength screaming at the clouds, or will we anchor ourselves in what we can control? Our choices, our reactions, our effort. When we choose the latter, something powerful happens. We stop being victims of circumstance and start being authors of our own story. We stop being tossed endlessly by the waves and start steering our own ship, even if the sea is rough. That choice, repeated again and again, builds the kind of mental strength that no storm can wash away. Growth is never born out of the moments when life is easy, predictable, or convenient. Growth is born in the spaces that test us, in the hours when we feel stretched thin, in the seasons when nothing seems certain. The truth is, every person you admire, every story of greatness that inspires you has been forged in fire. Comfort has never built resilience. Ease has never produced strength. The path to becoming who you were meant to be is paved with moments that make you question yourself, moments that press against your limits, and moments that force you to confront the unknown. Think of the athlete who trains long before the sun rises and long after it sets, pushing their body until it aches, collapsing into exhaustion only to rise again the next day. They don't find joy in the pain, but they understand the pain is part of the process. Think of the entrepreneur who risks everything, who faces rejection after rejection, who invests time, money, and energy without a guarantee of success. They don't run from fear. They coexist with it because they know reward never lives in comfort. And think of the leaders you admire, those who step into uncharted waters when everyone else hesitates. They are not immune to uncertainty. They simply embrace it as the soil from which progress grows. Thomas Edison is a story we all know. Thousands of failed attempts, thousands of so-called mistakes, and yet when asked about his failures, he reframed them not as defeat, but as discovery. I didn't fail, he said. I found 10,000 ways that didn't work. This wasn't a clever spin. It was a mindset that allowed him to remain relentless in the face of discomfort. Edison understood that discomfort is not the enemy. It is the companion of innovation, the partner of persistence, the teacher of greatness. The instinct we all have is to run from discomfort, to seek the safe, the certain, the secure. But safety doesn't shape us. Certainty doesn't challenge us. Security doesn't prepare us for the storms we will inevitably face. When we build our lives around avoiding discomfort, we are building walls that keep out growth, opportunity, and transformation. Discomfort is not a punishment, it is an invitation. It invites us to learn, to stretch, to evolve. Consider a muscle. It only grows when it is torn, strained, and pushed beyond its limits. Left unused, it weakens. The mind and the spirit work the same way. If you never push them beyond what feels easy, they remain stagnant. But when you willingly step into challenges, when you put yourself in positions where you might fail, where you might stumble, where you might feel vulnerable, you are strengthening yourself in ways you can't see in the moment, but you will be grateful for in the future. Think back on the moments in your life that shaped you most. Were they the easy days? Were they the times when everything went smoothly, when no one questioned you, when nothing was at stake? Or were they the days you were tested, the nights you doubted yourself, the times you had to rise up even when you wanted to quit? It is in those moments, the moments of discomfort, that your character was refined, your courage was built, and your resilience was born. Discomfort teaches us humility. It reminds us we don't have all the answers, that we are not invincible, that we must keep learning. Discomfort teaches us empathy, because when we have felt pain, we can understand the pain of others. Discomfort teaches us creativity, because when the usual solutions don't work, we are forced to think differently. And most importantly, discomfort teaches us perseverance, the ability to keep moving forward when the path is hard and unclear. We live in a world that worships convenience. We want results without effort, success without sacrifice, strength without struggle, but convenience robs us of resilience. If everything came easy, we would never know the depth of our own potential. We would never discover the strength that hides inside us, waiting for the moment of challenge to reveal itself. The truth is, the moments that scare us, the moments that stretch us, the moments that make us uncomfortable, those are the moments that prepare us for the opportunities we haven't even imagined yet. Every great breakthrough, personal or professional, has been preceded by discomfort. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison before he became the leader who transformed a nation. Rosa Parks sat in discomfort when she refused to give up her seat, sparking a movement that changed the course of history. Elon Musk has faced countless failures and near bankruptcies before reshaping industries. Each of these examples reminds us that discomfort is not a detour on the road to greatness. It is the road. And so the challenge for each of us is simple, yet profound: to stop running from discomfort. To stop labeling it as something to avoid and instead welcome it as the teacher it truly is. The next time you feel fear rising in your chest, instead of retreating, lean in. The next time you feel resistance telling you, this is too hard, recognize that very moment as the edge of your current capacity, the edge that only expands when you push through it. This does not mean recklessly seeking pain or chaos. It means having the courage to step into spaces where growth is possible, even if they scare you. It means daring to have the hard conversation instead of avoiding it. It means trying the thing you might fail at instead of staying safe in what you already know. It means choosing the path that stretches you even when the shorter, easier path tempts you. Life will give us discomfort whether we choose it or not. Loss, change, uncertainty. They will arrive at our door no matter how carefully we plan. The only question is, will we already be strong enough to handle it? When we choose discomfort intentionally, when we train ourselves to face it, we are building the mental strength to handle whatever uninvited discomfort life throws at us. The people who achieve remarkable things are not always the smartest or the most talented. They are the ones willing to embrace discomfort. They are the ones who see failure not as the end, but as part of the process. They are the ones who welcome challenge, who lean into risk, who step forward even when fear whispers in their ear. If you want to build mental strength, stop asking, how can I make this easier? And start asking, what will I learn if I stay in the discomfort? Stop seeing discomfort as an obstacle and start seeing it as the path. When you do, you will discover a power within yourself that comfort could never give you. Because comfort protects you, but discomfort transforms you. The choice is yours. You can stay safe, stay the same, and let life pass you by. Or you can embrace discomfort, walk through the fire, and come out stronger, wiser, and unshakable. The only way forward is through. Gratitude is one of those words that often gets thrown around as if it's simply about saying thank you or writing down a list of nice things at the end of the day. But the truth is, gratitude is not a checklist. It's not just about being polite or expressing manners. Gratitude is a discipline. It is a conscious act of shifting perspective, even when the world feels like it's closing in on us. And when I say discipline, I mean it in the same way we think of physical training or mental focus. It requires effort, consistency, and an unwavering commitment to practice, especially when it's hardest to do so. There's an extraordinary truth about gratitude that science has confirmed. It literally rewires the brain. Neural pathways that once were dominated by stress, anxiety, or despair begin to give way to resilience and hope. And this doesn't happen by accident. It happens because choosing gratitude, even in the darkest of times, is like creating a trail in the wilderness. The first time it feels almost impossible, but each step makes it more familiar, more accessible, until one day it becomes the path you instinctively know how to walk. Think about the power of this for a moment. We all know what it feels like when the weight of life presses so heavily that breathing itself feels like work. Maybe it's a diagnosis you didn't expect, a betrayal you didn't see coming, or a loss that left you hollow. In those moments, the easiest thing to do is collapse under the heaviness, to allow the pain to define us. And yet, gratitude gives us another option. It doesn't remove the weight, but it gives us the strength to carry it differently. Gratitude does not say, this isn't happening. Gratitude says, even in this, something good remains. Even here, there is light. I'm reminded of soldiers who, in the midst of battle, take time to write gratitude letters. Imagine that. Surrounded by chaos, uncertainty, and fear, they choose to reflect on what they're thankful for. A sunrise, a letter from home, a joke shared with a friend in the trenches. These are not trivial things, they are lifelines. In an environment where death and destruction are constant companions, gratitude becomes a weapon of resilience. It becomes a way to say, yes, the world is broken, but my spirit does not have to be. This isn't just something reserved for soldiers. We see it in people battling illness, who still find joy in a smile from a nurse or the touch of a loved one's hand. We see it in families who have lost everything in disasters, yet express thanks for being alive, and for the strangers who show up to help them. These moments of gratitude don't erase suffering. They don't magically fix the loss. What they do is anchor us in hope. They remind us that even when life feels stripped bare, there is still something left to hold on to. And here's the paradox: gratitude is most powerful not when life is easy, but when life is hard. Anyone can be grateful when everything is going well. That's not the challenge. The true test is whether we can practice gratitude in pain, whether we can look at the fragments of our lives and still say, there is beauty here. This kind of gratitude transforms us. It creates resilience, it deepens character, and it makes us capable of enduring storms that would otherwise break us. The world often tells us that strength comes from denying our pain, from putting on a brave face and pretending we're unaffected. But real strength is something different. Real strength is admitting that we are hurting and still choosing to see the small sparks of light that remain. Gratitude is the lens that makes those sparks visible. It is not denial. It is defiance. Defiance against despair. Defiance against hopelessness. It is saying, you may take much from me, but you will not take my ability to see goodness. And here's the thing: when we choose gratitude consistently, we don't just change ourselves, we change the people around us. Gratitude is contagious. It creates ripples that move outward, shaping culture, relationships, and communities. Think about walking into a room where people are constantly complaining versus walking into a room where people are intentionally thankful. The energy is completely different. Gratitude doesn't just heal individuals, it strengthens bonds. It tells others, you matter. What you bring matters. In families, gratitude fosters connection. In organizations, it builds trust. In communities, it creates resilience. And on a global scale, it has the power to shift narratives away from division and scarcity toward unity and possibility. It starts small. One person noticing, one person saying thank you, but it grows. It always grows. Of course, practicing gratitude isn't always easy. It's not supposed to be. It's work. It requires slowing down enough to notice what's good. It requires humility to recognize that we are not entitled to everything we have, and that even the simplest gifts, air to breathe, water to drink, someone who cares about us, are worth celebrating. And it requires courage to choose gratitude when bitterness or resentment feel easier. But if we commit to it, gratitude becomes not just a practice, but a way of living. It becomes part of who we are. We begin to wake up differently, to notice differently, to love differently. Gratitude doesn't eliminate the storms of life, but it does build the shelter we need to endure them. It gives us perspective, reminding us that no matter how dark it gets, light always exists somewhere. And sometimes that light comes not from the circumstances, but from the way we choose to see them. So when life feels heavy, when the noise is too loud and the pain is too sharp, remember this: gratitude is not about pretending everything is fine. It's about recognizing that even in pain, there is still something good. Gratitude is not weakness, it is strength. It is not Narvi optimism, it is courageous realism. And it is not about denying the darkness, but about refusing to let the darkness blind us to the light. Imagine for a moment a life where every demand is met, every request is accepted, and every opportunity, no matter how draining, is pursued. On the surface, it may sound noble, even admirable, to live a life of constant availability. After all, isn't being helpful, kind, and accommodating what makes us good people? But the reality is far from that illusion. The truth is, constantly saying yes is one of the fastest ways to lose yourself. It is one of the most subtle but destructive habits that slowly chips away at your mental strength, your sense of peace, and even your sense of purpose. Too many people don't collapse under the weight of failure. They collapse under the weight of overcommitment. They don't fall apart because they aren't capable. They fall apart because they are too willing. They give and give until there is nothing left for themselves. They allow guilt to creep in, whispering that saying no is selfish, that declining a request is a betrayal, that prioritizing yourself is wrong. And so they continue to give until burnout consumes them like a silent fire. But here's the truth: setting boundaries is not selfish. Setting boundaries is an act of strength, courage, and even love. Love for yourself, because you recognize that your energy and time are finite. Love for others, because you understand that when you say yes to everything, your yes loses its meaning. It becomes diluted, weak, and sincere. Real value comes when your yes is chosen, intentional, and powerful. Think about Steve Jobs. He was told repeatedly that Apple would fail, that his vision was unrealistic, that his stubbornness to protect his ideas would destroy him. If he had listened to every critic, if he had given his time, his energy, his focus to every opinion, he would have lost the very essence of what made him great. Instead, he built a boundary around his vision. He knew that not every voice deserved his attention. Not every request deserved his energy. Not every distraction deserved a yes. That boundary wasn't about shutting the world out. It was about protecting the fire inside him long enough for it to grow into something that changed the world. Boundaries aren't walls. They aren't meant to keep people away or isolate you from the world. They are gates. And the beautiful thing about a gate is that it doesn't just keep things out. It allows you to decide what comes in. It allows you to filter. It allows you to protect what matters most while still letting love, joy, opportunity, and connection flow through. When you have no boundaries, you are at the mercy of everyone else's agenda. But when you learn to set them, you begin to live your life on your terms. Picture this: every time you say yes to something you don't truly want to do, you are saying no to something you do want to do. You are saying no to rest, no to your health, no to your dreams, no to the quiet moments of reflection that might spark your greatest idea, no to the people who matter most. And the irony is, in trying to please everyone, you end up pleasing no one. Not even yourself. Because the person you become when you are drained, resentful, and burned out is not the best version of you. We live in a world that celebrates business, that praises people for burning the candle at both ends. That confuses exhaustion with dedication. But exhaustion is not a badge of honor. It's a sign that boundaries have been crossed, ignored, or never set in the first place. And the strongest people are not the ones who endure everything thrown their way. The strongest people are the ones who have the courage to say, this is where my energy ends. This is where my priorities lie. This is where I protect my peace. Consider how many great leaders, athletes, and creators would have failed if they hadn't learned this lesson. Imagine an Olympic athlete who trains tirelessly, but never says no to late night parties or distractions. Imagine a writer who dreams of publishing a masterpiece, but agrees to every coffee meeting, every side project, every favor asked. Imagine a parent who gives to every request at work, at home, in the community, until they are left with nothing but fatigue to offer their own children. Boundaries don't just protect dreams, they protect relationships, health, and even love itself. And yet, The hardest part isn't understanding why boundaries matter. It's dealing with the guilt that comes with setting them. We are conditioned to believe that being available at all times is kindness. We are taught that sacrificing ourselves is noble. We are told that the word no is negative, harsh, unkind. But here's the paradox. Every time you say yes when you really mean no, you create dishonesty. You betray your truth. You show up in ways that are half-hearted, distracted, and resentful. That is not kindness, that is compromise. Real kindness, real authenticity. When your yes means yes and your no means no. Think about the relationships that truly matter to you. Do you want the people you love to give you their time out of guilt? Do you want their yes to come at the expense of their peace? Or do you want them to show up fully, joyfully, wholeheartedly because they chose to? When you flip that perspective, guilt begins to lose its power. You begin to see that your boundaries aren't just about you. They're about creating space for honesty, for respect, and for deeper connections. Boundaries are also not fixed forever. They are living, breathing expressions of your values. As your life changes, as your priorities evolve, so too will your boundaries. The boundary you set as a young professional climbing the ladder may look different from the one you set as a parent raising children or as a leader guiding a team. The constant is not the boundary itself. The constant is the courage it takes to set it. And that courage comes from a deep understanding of one truth: you are not here to please everyone. You are not here to live someone else's life. You are not here to say yes until your spirit is crushed under the weight of obligation. You are here to live fully, intentionally, and meaningfully, and that requires boundaries. So when the guilt rises up, and it will, remind yourself of this: every no you say to something unaligned is a yes to something that truly matters. Every boundary you create is not a barrier, but a bridge to a life lived with integrity, a bridge to energy that is preserved for your greatest work, a bridge to relationships that thrive not on obligation, but on authenticity, a bridge to a version of yourself that is not drained, but alive. The world does not need more people who burn themselves out trying to keep everyone happy. The world needs more people who are lit from within, who guard their flame, who choose carefully what they give their energy to. The world needs more people who understand that strength isn't in saying yes to everything. It's in having the courage to say no without guilt, and the wisdom to know when that no is the most loving answer of all. Life is not fair, and anyone who tells you otherwise has not lived long enough. The truth is, every single one of us will face circumstances that seem unjust, undeserved, and at times unbearable. The strongest among us are not those who avoid hardship, because no one truly can. The strongest are those who refuse to be defined by it. There is a profound difference between being a victim of circumstance and living with a victim mentality. One is inevitable, the other is a choice. You will be knocked down in life, sometimes by events you never saw coming, and sometimes by people you thought you could trust. You may lose a job, a loved one, your health, or your sense of stability. That's being human. But the moment you decide that the world owes you something because of what you've been through, you hand over the pen that writes your story. You let pain, betrayal, or tragedy become the author of your life. The victim mentality is seductive. It gives us a reason to stay where we are, to explain why things aren't working, to excuse ourselves from trying again. It whispers that the world is unfair, and so it's okay if we don't rise, if we don't fight, if we don't grow. But the truth is, the world is unfair, and yet many still rise. The question is not whether life has dealt you a difficult hand, but whether you will play it or fold. Oprah Winfrey's story embodies this truth. As a child, she was abused, neglected, and told by many that she would never succeed. By every measure, she had enough pain and injustice in her past to justify giving up on herself. She could have clung to the narrative of brokenness, replayed the story of what others had done to her, and settled into a life of bitterness. But she did not. She chose instead to ask not, "Why me? But what now?" She turned her pain into fuel, her scars into lessons, and her setbacks into stepping stones. Today, she stands as one of the most influential figures in the world, not because life was kind to her, but because she refused to let hardship have the final word. Strength, real strength, comes not when you have power over others, but when you have power over yourself. It's the strength to say, yes, it hurt, yes, it wasn't fair, but no, it will not define who I am. That decision is where transformation begins. We live in a culture that often glorifies quick success, instant results, and effortless achievement. But those stories are illusions. The people who truly inspire us are not the ones who had everything handed to them. They are the ones who were tested, broken, humbled, and still chose to rise. The fire in their eyes does not come from a life of ease. It comes from walking through trials and refusing to surrender their identity to them. When you resist the victim mentality, you shift from focusing on what you've lost to focusing on what you can build. You stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What can I do with this?" That single shift changes everything. It turns pain into purpose, loss into wisdom, and wounds into sources of empathy that allow you to connect with others more deeply than ever before. Think about every person you admire: athletes, leaders, visionaries, innovators. Their success did not come in spite of their challenges, but often because of them. They didn't rise because they were spared suffering. They rose because they decided not to let suffering have the last word. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison, yet came out not as a broken man, but as a leader who changed the course of a nation. Malala Yousafzai was shot for daring to go to school, and instead of retreating into fear, she became the voice of millions of girls around the world. These are not stories of people untouched by hardship. These are stories of people who refuse to be victims of it. Resisting the victim mentality does not mean ignoring your pain. It does not mean pretending everything is fine when it's not. It means acknowledging the hurt, but refusing to stay stuck in it. It means looking at your wounds and saying, "This is not the end of me. This is the beginning of something greater." Pain is a powerful teacher, but only if you allow it to teach rather than trap you. Every time you rise after being knocked down, you strengthen your resilience. Every time you choose hope when despair feels easier, you build a muscle that will carry you through the next storm. Every time you shift your focus from "why me" to "what now," you reclaim control of your life. Imagine if Oprah had stayed in her pain, if Mandela had allowed bitterness to rule him, if Malala had silenced her voice out of fear. The world would be missing extraordinary light. And here's the truth somewhere out there. Someone is waiting for your light. Someone needs to see that you can go through what you've been through and still rise. Your refusal to live as a victim might just be the inspiration someone else needs to keep going. This is the paradox of strength that is born not in ease but in adversity. The cracks in your life, the breaks in your story are not there to destroy you. They are there to let the light in. When you resist the victim mentality, you are not denying that life has hurt you. You are declaring that life will not have the power to define you. So when life knocks you down, and it will, don't stay there pointing fingers, waiting for the world to apologize, waiting for circumstances to change. Ask yourself instead, what now? Because the answer to that question is where strength is built, where purpose is discovered, and where the next chapter of your story begins. And that story can be one of resilience, courage, and inspiration, not because life was fair, but because you were stronger than your excuses. Discipline is not glamorous. It doesn't always come with applause, with medals, or with recognition. In fact, most of the time it happens in silence. It happens in the moments when no one is watching, when no one is keeping score, and when the easiest choice is to quit. But that's where the foundation of mental toughness is built. Because strength isn't something you summon in a single heroic act. It's the outcome of countless choices, small and often invisible, that accumulate into resilience. Think of the people we admire most for their achievements. Rarely do we celebrate just the end result. We marvel at the dedication behind it. Michael Phelps, the most decorated Olympian in history, didn't step into the pool and magically become the best swimmer in the world. He became the best because he trained for 6 hours a day, every day for years. He built habits that were so ingrained that when he stood on the starting block at the Olympic Games, he wasn't relying on luck or even talent. He was relying on discipline. He knew that his body and mind had rehearsed every stroke thousands of times. Pressure didn't break him because discipline had prepared him. That's the beauty of discipline. It transforms preparation into confidence. Confidence is not bravado, it's not arrogance, it's not pretending to be unshakable. True confidence is a quiet assurance that when the moment comes, you will be ready. That readiness only comes when you've trained yourself through consistent, often tedious practice. The repetition, the routine, the deliberate choices, all of these build a foundation so strong that when the storm arrives, you don't collapse, you simply act. But here's the challenge: most of us don't fail because of one big mistake. We fail because we don't commit to the small things daily. We tell ourselves we'll start tomorrow. We'll exercise when life slows down. We'll save money when we have more. We'll work on that project when inspiration strikes. And so days slip into weeks, weeks into months, and suddenly we realize we've trained ourselves in the discipline of avoidance. We've built habits, but not the ones that serve us. Mental toughness requires flipping that script. It means practicing discipline not when it's convenient, but especially when it's not. Discipline is choosing the salad over the burger when your body craves comfort food. Discipline is waking up an hour earlier to study, train, or create when your bed feels irresistible. Discipline is saying no to distractions even when they promise short-term pleasure because you're invested in long-term fulfillment. Think about soldiers in training. Boot camps are designed not just to test physical limits, but to ingrain habits of discipline. They're taught to polish their boots, make their beds with precision, follow routines down to the second. From the outside, it looks obsessive. But the purpose is profound. If you can master the small disciplines when life is ordinary, you'll be able to stay calm and effective when life becomes chaotic. Because chaos doesn't reward improvisation, it rewards preparation. And that applies to all of us. Consider a student preparing for an exam. If they study consistently, even just a little each day, they build not just knowledge, but confidence. When they walk into the exam room, their nerves don't overwhelm them because they've built trust in their own preparation. Contrast that with someone who crams the night before. They may know some of the material, but the anxiety is greater because their foundation is weak. Confidence is not something you fake. It's something you earn, and discipline is how you earn it. Now, discipline doesn't mean perfection. It's not about never making mistakes. It's about consistency. Even Michael Phelps missed workouts. Even the greatest leaders, thinkers, and athletes have days when they fall short. What sets them apart isn't that they never stumble, it's that they return to discipline the next day. They don't allow one setback to spiral into surrender. They recognize that discipline is not a single act, but a lifestyle. And here's the irony: discipline, which feels so restrictive in the beginning, is actually what gives us freedom. Without discipline, we're slaves to impulse. We react instead of act. We drift instead of decide. But with discipline, we gain control. We control our energy, our focus, our outcomes. That's why disciplined people are often the most creative. They've given themselves the structure to actually finish what they start. That's why disciplined leaders inspire trust. They've proven that they can be counted on. That's why disciplined athletes achieve greatness. They've built a body and mind that can withstand anything. Let's be honest though, practicing discipline daily is hard. It doesn't come naturally to most of us. Our brains are wired to seek comfort, to save energy, to avoid effort. Discipline is going against that instinct. It's saying, "Well, I will do what is hard today so tomorrow I can be stronger." It's delayed gratification. And in a world where everything is instant likes, instant messages, instant results, that makes discipline a rare and powerful asset. Think of the story of Colonel Sanders, rejected over 1,000 times before someone finally said yes to his chicken recipe. It wasn't luck that carried him through rejection after rejection. It was discipline. Discipline to keep refining his pitch. Discipline to keep showing up. Discipline to believe that the daily grind would one day pay off. That persistence rooted in discipline built an empire. And yet discipline is not reserved for Olympians, soldiers, or entrepreneurs. It belongs to all of us. It shows up in the parent who works long hours but still makes time to read bedtime stories. It shows up in the student who practices the violin every night even when friends are out playing. It shows up in the individual who decides to meditate each morning, not because it's easy, because it builds mental clarity. These small, consistent acts of discipline are the invisible bricks that build resilience. When you look back on your life, it won't be the one-time efforts that define your strength. It will be the discipline of showing up every day. The times you chose persistence over excuses. The mornings you rose when you wanted to sleep. The hours you put in when no one was applauding. That's what creates mental toughness. That's what creates confidence. Because in the end, discipline is more than a practice. It's a promise. A promise you make to yourself that you will not give up. You will not take the easy way out. You will not let comfort rob you of greatness. And when you keep that promise day after day, something remarkable happens. You no longer question whether you can handle life's challenges. You know you can because you've trained for them. You've built the strength brick by brick, choice by choice, day by day. And that, more than anything, is the true power of discipline. Strength is never built in silence or solitude. We like to tell ourselves that the toughest people stand alone, unshaken, unbothered, impenetrable. But the truth is, no one becomes strong in isolation. Every leader, every innovator, every fighter who has ever persevered through the storms of life had people around them who lifted them up, challenged them, and held them accountable. The environment you place yourself in is not neutral. It is either draining your energy or fueling your spirit. And when you understand that, you begin to see the people around you in a different light, not just as companions, but as the architects of your mental resilience. If you surround yourself with negativity, with people who constantly complain, who choose excuses over effort, you will find yourself sinking without even noticing it. Their words seep into your thoughts, and their limits become your limits. You start shrinking your dreams to fit their fears. But place yourself among those who dare to dream, who take bold action, who see possibility where others see obstacles, and you'll feel yourself rise. It's not magic, it's not coincidence, it's influence. Humans are wired to adapt to their environment. If you want to grow, you must plant yourself in soil rich with encouragement, accountability, and vision. Think about the story of the Wright brothers. They were not wealthy, they were not privileged. They didn't have access to elite education or endless resources. What they did was each other. Two brothers who refused to accept the common belief that flight was impossible. They leaned on each other, challenged each other, and sharpened each other's ideas until what seemed absurd to the rest of the world became reality. Their success wasn't born out of individual genius. It was forged in the fire of collaboration and trust. They remind us that strength multiplies when shared. And that's the essence of community. It's not just companionship, it's reinforcement. It's a network of energy that holds you when you falter, pushes you when you hesitate, and believes in you when your own faith wavers. We are social beings. Even the strongest among us need someone to say, keep going. Sometimes resilience doesn't come from within. It's borrowed from those who refuse to let us quit. But this doesn't mean surrounding yourself with just anyone. It's about choosing carefully, because the people closest to you are either building your mental armor or breaking it down. Consider the difference between someone who listens to your dream and immediately lists all the reasons it won't work, versus someone who listens and asks, how can I help? One leaves you doubting. The other leaves you daring. One keeps you safe in mediocrity. The other pulls you into possibility. History is filled with examples of how strength is amplified by community. Take the civil rights movement. One man, Martin Luther King Jr., became the voice of change, but he was never alone. There were thousands who marched, who sang, who endured beatings, who filled jail cells. They drew strength from one another, turning despair into hope and fear into courage. Would Dr. King's dream have lived if he had been isolated? Or did it become unstoppable because it was carried by a collective who believed just as fiercely as he did? Even in our personal lives, this principle holds true. Think about athletes. The ones who stand on podiums with medals around their necks didn't get there by training alone in a dark room. They had coaches pushing them, teammates supporting them, families sacrificing for them, and fans cheering them on. Their victories are communal, not individual. And when you look at any person who has achieved greatness, behind them you will always find a circle of strength that made it possible. Surrounding yourself with strength doesn't mean you'll never face hardship. It doesn't mean you'll never feel weak. It means when those moments come, and they will, you won't be crushed under the weight of them, because others will help carry the load. It's the friend who calls you out when you're about to give up. It's the mentor who sees potential